Welcome to the Great Art Guide. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most iconic paintings in Western art, The Death of Socrates, by Jacques-Louis David. Painted in 1787, this neoclassical masterpiece captures the final moments of the great Greek philosopher Socrates, sentenced to death by hemlock for corrupting the youth of Athens. David's interpretation of this dramatic event speaks volumes about the philosophical ideals of the time and the power of art to convey complex human emotions. Historical context. Before we explore the details of the painting itself, let's set the scene. In 399 BCE, Socrates, an influential thinker and teacher, was put on trial by the Athenian government. His method of questioning and challenging societal norms was seen as a threat to the city's traditional beliefs. Ultimately, Socrates was found guilty of impiety and corrupting the youth, leading to his execution. Despite the tragic end, Socrates' steadfast commitment to his philosophy remains a symbol of intellectual courage. The moment depicted is based on Plato's dialogue Phaedo. Socrates has been sentenced by the Athenian court to die by drinking a mixture containing hemlock, a slow-acting poison that causes paralysis and then death. The poison was administered in accordance with Athenian law, and Socrates was to take it himself, which was customary at the time. Let's fast forward now to the late 18th century. The painting was created during the Age of Enlightenment, a time when reason, individualism, and skepticism of authority were central ideals. David, a prominent figure in French neoclassical art, was deeply influenced by these Enlightenment values. His portrayal of Socrates' death is not just a historical moment, it's a celebration of rational thought, integrity, and the power of philosophical ideals. The scene in the painting. Now, let's take a closer look at the scene David has chosen to depict. We see Socrates in the center, surrounded by his disciples and friends. The mood is somber, but there's a sense of calm in Socrates' demeanor, as he faces his death with unwavering composure. He has one hand raised in a forceful, teaching gesture and the other reaching calmly toward the cup of poison, but his expression is serene, almost peaceful, suggesting that he has accepted his fate with dignity. He's reaching out for a cup of hemlock, about to drink it, and the moment is filled with a quiet but intense gravity. There's a sense of philosophical resolve in the way Socrates is positioned, which is almost as if he's about to impart one final lesson. He stands in contrast to his followers, many of whom are visibly distraught. Plato, seated on the far left, is shown with his head lowered, his expression one of grief and sorrow. His body language speaks to his deep connection to Socrates, his mentor. In contrast, the figure of Crito, standing at the foot of the bed, is shown with his hand outstretched in an attempt to offer the poison, though his own sadness is apparent. Apollodorus, another follower of Socrates, is portrayed as emotionally overwhelmed. His body is slumped, and he clutches Socrates' leg in visible despair. Notice how David captures the varied responses of Socrates' followers. Some are distraught, while others appear more composed, as if contemplating the broader meaning of Socrates' death. David's inclusion of these emotional contrasts emphasizes the philosophical and moral tension of the moment, the clash between the human tendency to resist death and the rational acceptance of it. The woman seen in the background, walking up the stairs and waving, is not mentioned in Plato's original account, but art historians widely interpret her as Xanthippe, the wife of Socrates. Jacques-Louis David includes her as a symbolic farewell. She's being led away, likely at Socrates' request, to spare her from witnessing his death. Her raised arm suggests a final, emotional goodbye, in stark contrast to the composed, philosophical atmosphere in the foreground. David uses her to heighten the emotional depth of the scene, reminding viewers that behind Socrates' Stoic ideals lies the deeply human reality of personal loss and grief. Composition and symbolism. Let's move on to the composition of the painting, which is as deliberate and meaningful as the figures themselves. David uses strong diagonal lines to guide the viewer's eye across the canvas. Socrates is positioned at the center of the composition, but the placement of other figures creates a dynamic interplay of movement and stillness. The figures are arranged in a way that creates a sense of unity, even as they express different emotional states. This unity reflects the idea that, though they are all experiencing the same event, each individual reacts differently to the concept of death. One of the most striking elements of the painting is the use of light and shadow. Socrates is bathed in a soft, almost divine light, emphasizing his moral and intellectual purity. The light contrasts with the darker tones surrounding his disciples, highlighting the physical and emotional weight of the moment. This contrast between light and dark also symbolizes the tension between life and death, the known and the unknown. In terms of symbolism, the hemlock, poison, itself is an important symbol. It represents both the end of Socrates' life and the finality of his philosophical journey. However, it also serves as a symbol of martyrdom. Socrates dies for his beliefs, embodying the idea that intellectual and moral integrity sometimes requires great personal sacrifice. Crito is depicted with a sorrowful, reluctant expression as he hands Socrates the poison. This visual moment captures both personal grief and philosophical tension. Crito had previously tried to persuade Socrates to escape his sentence, but Socrates refused, staying true to his principles about law and justice. Crito's body language is tense and turned away, his head buried in his left hand, clearly distressed by the act he's forced to carry out. This emotional contrast heightens the drama of the moment. His red robes further emphasize the emotional intensity and drama of the scene. Socrates, seated upright and resolute, is reaching calmly for the cup with one hand while raising the other in a teaching gesture, continuing to instruct even in his final moments. Technique and style. David's neoclassical technique is key to understanding the painting's emotional power. The figures are rendered with great precision and clarity, their forms idealized in the classical style. The crispness of the lines, the controlled use of color, and the idealized representation of the human body all recall the art of ancient Greece and Rome. But David doesn't merely recreate classical forms, he imbues them with deep emotion and dramatic intensity. His careful attention to detail allows us to see both the physical realism of the figures and the emotional depth beneath the surface. The use of color is also significant. The rich, muted tones of the robes, the warm flesh tones of the figures, and the stark contrast of Socrates' white clothing emphasize his purity and moral authority. The balance of light and dark, particularly in the background, contributes to the overall sense of tension and drama. Conclusion. Jacques-Louis David's The Death of Socrates is far more than a historical painting. It's a profound meditation on reason, sacrifice, and the pursuit of truth. Through careful composition, expressive detail, and classical precision, David transforms a moment of death into a timeless symbol of intellectual courage. In facing death with unwavering conviction, Socrates becomes not just a philosopher, but an enduring beacon of integrity and moral strength. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into Jacques-Louis David's The Death of Socrates, don't forget to subscribe to the Great Art Guide for more in-depth explorations of art's greatest masterpieces. We have plenty more to discover, so hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for our next journey into the world of art history. Thanks for watching.